Welcome to CEC Gurukul lectures on bioinformatics. This is the sixth lecture in the series, and we have already talked about the science of bioinformatics. Then I introduced you the databases, that what all databases have. Then we also talked about the nucleic acid databases. We did gene expression databases, and in the last talk, we talked about the metagenome data analysis. So after having done all that, today we'll be talking about the sequence alignment. That is the mainstay of bioinformatics, is the sequence alignment, and we'll be talking today about the concepts and algorithms only. Meaning we will take the tools and different softwares in this multiple sequence alignment in the next lecture. Today we'll focus on the basic concepts in sequence alignment, and we'll talk about the algorithms in that. So the learning objective for today's talk is what is sequence alignment. We define these terms, try to understand the meaning, and what information about a sequence we get after we align this sequence, we would know that. Then we would understand the scoring matrices which are used in sequence alignment and giving them a score and why they are important. We would also know different algorithms and different methods for global and local sequence alignment. So let's start with sequence alignment. What is a sequence alignment? Meaning, how do we define that? Sequence alignment is the identification of residue to residue correspondence in two or more sequences. So what we do is we do alphabet wise residue to residue correspondence in two or more sequences. And what do we aim to in sequence alignment? We try to search for series of individual characters or the patterns in these sequences that are in the same order in the given sequences. So we try to find out the similarities or the patterns in the character in these two or many sequences which we are comparing. So first, what we do in sequence alignment, I just said we compare the sequence residue by residue. So here are two sequences, two example sequences which we have kept, sequence 1 and sequence 2. So what we'll do is we'll keep the one sequence over the other, and we will do one by one each alphabet or residue to residue correspondence in this. Then what else we do is we count, meaning we want to give it a score in sequence alignment. So like in this case, we should know what is the total number of matches here or what are the total number of mismatches. Like you can see here, I have put a vertical line where it is matching, and if you see, there are only 7 matches in this sequence and we have 20 mismatches, total 27 amino acids. So this is the first thing to understand, is that we talk about matches and mismatches. Then the same sequence, another concept which comes here is the insertion of gaps. So if you see the same sequence, that is sequence 1 and sequence 2 in the previous example, if I insert gaps, you can see the gaps after A, I have inserted 3 gaps, and if you can see another gap at the third last position. So when we insert gaps, what happens? We can increase the matches. Now instead of 7, we have 14 matches. So another thing in sequence alignment is we consider getting more matches by inserting gaps. And we also, what we do is we give this alignment a score. How do we give that? We count the matches, mismatches, and for insertion of the gap, we give a penalty. So like in any hypothetical example or maybe in general cases, we give +1 for a match, -1 for insertion of a gap, and 0 for a mismatch. And we add all these values and then we get a final score of this alignment. So again, coming back to this hypothetical example of sequence 1 and 2, in the beginning it just had 7 matches. So the score was 7. So when we inserted the gap, what happened? We could get 14 matches, but we inserted 4 gaps. So we have to minus 4 out of the 14 score which we got. So the score of this one is 10. So what we try to achieve in sequence alignment, we try to get the higher score. So the higher the score is, the better the alignment is. So for this small example of sequence alignment, I hope everybody could understand that by inserting the gaps and making small adjustments, we could get a better score. And this is what we try to do with algorithms or different steps and different functions. So before we actually talk about the algorithms, we must understand few important terms which will be cited at several places and which will keep coming in between. So first of that is a distance function. So a distance function for two sequences is defined by looking for the alignment that yields the maximum score. So first we look for the alignment that gives us the maximum score, and then we define the distance function. Then there is another term here which is quite commonly used, is indel. What is indel? It is derived from insertion and deletion in the sequences, right? So insertion and deletion, when we compare the sequences in alignment, insertion is same as deletion. We do not need to distinguish them. So we together put them under one term, that is indel, meaning there is some deletion in the sequence, and that could be that, or maybe deletion from one can be addition in the other one, and we refer to this to as indel. Then indel and substitution together are termed as added operations in the sequence. The minimal number of added operations that can convert one sequence to another is called as added distance, right? So minimal number of added operation that can convert one sequence to another is added distance. This is quite important to understand because it is really going to help us in deciding the best alignment and in understanding the other meanings which we derive out of this alignment. So another thing here is that when we compare two sequences, each added operation is given a score or a weight. So these were the few terms which I thought will come in between when we talk about algorithms, and it was good to understand them before or have a concept of them before. So what alignment algorithms do? The alignment algorithms, they search for a set of added operation with maximum of total score. So alignment algorithms would search for the added operation, and the objective is to get the maximum total score. So here is an example of multiple sequence alignment done for 6 sequences, and it has been done with the software Clustal, which is the most popular software for multiple sequence alignment. And we are taking the softwares and tools and the other interpretation of sequence alignments in the next lecture, but here just I thought I show you one alignment. How does it look like? So this is multiple sequence alignment in 6 sequences done by students in the class, in the practical class, and here they have run the 6 sequences. You can very well see that the sequences differ in their amino acid length, and you get the output. And if you see at the top, it is written, it is a bad alignment, good or average alignment. So not only we know that the alignment, which portion of the sequences is best aligned, which is average, or which may be the poorly aligned segments, and it also tells us the perfect or the regions, like the star denotes the positions where we have a perfect alignment, right? The sequence in all that particular amino acid or residue is same in all the sequences. Then if you see the colon shows the strong similarity, and this is greater than 0.5 according to similarity matrix PAM. So I am not talking about similarity matrix PAM here because I will be taking that in details after a while, but it shows a strong similarity and it also shows you weaker similarity, the one with the single dot. So what did we get out of this alignment? That it's not a simple contextual matching of the words, rather it tells you much more than that. So what information does a sequence alignment contain? I just showed you the result of a sequence alignment, and I now try to tell you in point wise what information we can gather from this sequence alignment. First is we'll have a statistical measure of the similarity provided by the sequence alignment that I showed you in the previous slide, and not only it tells us about the measure of the similarity, but it also tells you where it is weak, meaning there is a measure of similarity and it tells you where it is weak, where it is strong, the resemblance or the similarity. Then it also tells you about homology between the sequences. Now what is a homology? In homology we talk about the ancestral sequences or maybe the origin, and we talk about evolution, that which may be the we talk about the ancestry, and this is done by using a similarity objective function, and we set rewards and penalty for model evolution. So what is happening is that I told you earlier, and we'll be talking about the scoring matrices. Based on the models, the scores have been decided, and that really helps us in knowing the sequences are homologous or not, and they share the common ancestry or not. But sequence alignment tells us about that. Then this is again a small picture which I have taken from the practical done by the students in the class. And what is it showing you? The 10 sequences for the enzyme cellobiohydrolase. And same way like previous one, you can see it has several regions absolutely conserved, same in all 10, and you have strongly aligned regions, poorly aligned regions, all marked here. And another thing which is showing here is that we can, based on this, we can draw very easily we can draw a phylogenetic tree, and that tree tells us whether they have a common origin or they are different origin. So the next point or next information which we get from sequence alignment is that it helps us in deciphering or inferring the evolutionary relationship, that is the molecular phylogeny of in the sequences. So it's a very important and a basic tool in molecular phylogeny. And I already told you that in determining the molecular phylogeny, the determination of added operations play a key role. Like we decide how many added operations are needed to convert one sequence to the another, and we draw a phylogenetic tree based on these added operations. So the sequence alignment can easily be used for predicting or inferring the molecular phylogeny. Then sequence alignment also tells us about the functionally important sites in these sequences, because the function, we would easily know the highly conserved regions in these sequences, and the conserved sites are usually important for the structure or the function of the protein, and that way we can know that which is the functionally important site, and this really helps in designing the mutagenesis experiments. So here is another importance of studying the sequence alignment, or what information it sometimes is very useful in predicting the secondary structure of the protein or the amino acid sequence polypeptide. Here it is the same cellobiohydrolase enzyme which I was showing you. Based on multiple sequence alignment, that 3D structure of this cellulose binding domain has been deciphered. So multiple sequence alignment also helps us in deciphering the the 3D structure, in predicting the 3D structure. It's just a small cartoon which has been derived based on the different proportions of different amino acids in this cellobiohydrolase enzyme. The another thing which we can know by multiple sequence alignment study is they are also used in prediction of function of a protein. So again, we will be discussing this in details with the help of cellulose binding. Like I gave you the example just now, is we could know the cellulose binding domain of cellobiohydrolase enzyme by studying the multiple sequence alignment and the 3D structure, by prediction of the 3D structure. And lastly, but not the least, because it is a very important tool for contextual analysis. So in contextual analysis, we just compare the residue by residue like typos, and even that is very, very useful in molecular biology. So this contextual analysis really helps us in finding the vector contamination, or maybe we want to evaluate the primer candidates in the sequences or do biochip design. So that is the least which we get out of a multiple sequence alignment. So that is the contextual analysis that also is done by this method. So we have now known what is a multiple sequence alignment, what do we do in that, and what is a good alignment. Now we know what information we can derive from this alignment. Now we come to the next concept in studying the alignment, which we must understand is local versus optimal alignment. Now what is a local alignment? The local alignment considers only the best sequence for the alignment, meaning it just considers, sorry, I would just repeat it here. I said local alignment considers only the portion or the segment where the alignment is best. It is not bothered about the overall alignment or all the sequence, complete sequence, whole sequence. But in optimal alignment, we try to align the complete sequence and we take into consideration the complete sequence. That is very important in optimal alignment. So again, a small example. In the first one, we're going for local alignment. We are not bothered about rest of the sequence. We just have seen that a portion of the sequence is aligned very well, right? So we consider the local alignment. But in the second B segment, we are talking about the optimal alignment, and here we have tried to extend this alignment to the complete sequence. So this is how these two differ, and in rest of the lecture we will be talking about local and global alignment again and again. So we must have a clear concept about the local and global alignment. Going further, we will talk about scoring matrices. I told you just now, PAM and day of matrix. So what is a scoring matrix? Scoring matrix, if you want to write the definition of scoring matrix, scoring matrix gives a score that reflects the ease by which a particular amino acid or nucleotide in a protein or a nucleotide sequence can be substituted by another in a evolutionary related sequence, right? So in a multiple sequence alignment, what we do is we create a score basis of what? On the basis of the likelihood in or the ease by which a particular amino acid can be replaced by the other amino acid, or maybe a particular nucleotide that can be replaced by the other nucleotide. Say for example, we talk about the scoring matrix for a nucleotide. Like it is just decided that I will give +1 for a match, I will give 0 for a match and mismatch, and I will give -1 for a gap penalty. So this +1 -1 is decided on the basis of an experience, on the basis the scoring matrix is designed in that way, right? Say, and it varies for maybe DNA and protein. Like for example, if I would be designing a scoring matrix for a DNA, I might feel that if a DNA, a nucleotide is exactly matched, I give it more marks. I might consider that if a purine is matched to a purine, I give give a score to this, a pyrimidine to a pyrimidine. So the scoring matrix is designed based on the previous experience or your way of taking things, meaning what is your aim and objective of this matrix design is. So I said for nucleotide sequence alignment, sequence matrix, we could use any of these. We could for protein, maybe because in nucleotides we just have 4 possibilities, but in proteins we have 20 possible matches. And in case of alignment of the related sequences, one amino acid can be substituted by 20 other amino acids. So substitution matrix in case of amino acid is, we will have 20 possibilities and we will give it a score, understanding that it can be replaced by which amino acid in evolutionarily related sequences. So we talk about the first most important matrix here, that is de Hoff matrix, or maybe MDM, that is also called as mutation data matrix. Same name, different name for the same thing. Similarly, PAM, that is percent accepted mutation matrix, is just the same. And I already taught you that Margaret de Hoff is said to be the pioneer of bioinformatics. She laid the foundation of bioinformatics. Apart from that, she extensively worked with protein databases and their comparison. She developed a model of protein evolution based on 1572 changes in 71 groups of protein sequences. And she selectively took those sequences, they were 85% similar. So she developed a model of evolution based on similarity in the proteins, and she did not calculate the score in this matrix on the basis of physicochemical properties of amino acids. Rather, it was statistically derived by comparison from the related proteins, meaning what was observed in experience rather than the physical chemical properties of the amino acids. She gave a score ranging from -8 to 17. For example, to leucine to arginine, she gave a score of -3. But if there is a match of tyrosine to tyrosine, she gave it a score of 17, because it was the very rare combination which we usually used to get in the proteins. So this PAM matrix is based on the model which was proposed by Margaret de Hoff on the basis of her sequence collection, which were 85% similar. So this is just how her matrix looks like. I said the score varies from -8 to 17. So this was about PAM or de Hoff matrix, and there is a number always written on the right side of this, that is like PM1 or PM40 or PM100. So PM1 refers to that she has considered the evolutionary distance no more than 1% divergence. So in 100 she has considered 100% divergence, in 40 she has considered 40% divergence. Another very common matrix is BLOSUM, that is BLOSUM, which is Bloch's substitution matrix, and it is created by local ungapped multiple sequence alignment. This is very popular, and it again here we have 50% similarity or maybe 62% identity, and based on this they have given different names, and here how it looks like. It's just a small portion of BLOSUM 62, and it performs better than PAM in similarity searches, and it is the default matrix for BLAST 2.0. And why it is performing better? Because it is based on substitutions and conserved positions in blocks in the databases, present day databases. So that is why it is, because the Margaret de Hoff, her data was based on 85% more similarity, but it is based on the present day, and this is more popular. So the choice of matrix depends on the aims and objectives of the investigator. There is a relationship between the two, and the higher BLOSUM is the lower PAM. So with this one we are coming to the end of this section, and I just want to leave you with this cartoon where I am saying is that sequence analysis is not only contextual analysis, it can give you much more information. That means it can tell you about the inheritance, evolution, changes coming from generation to generation, or sequences. Thank you very much for attending this lecture, and I hope you could understand. I will be taking up the algorithms and methods in sequence alignment in the next portion of this talk. Thank you.